I joked on X yesterday that we won. We actually cyberbullied the Disney Corporation into no longer grooming children with gender ideology lines. And now I'm reconsidering that take, but here's the big news. There was this Pixar TV series in the works for Disney Plus, and they included a transgender storyline in the show that was ultimately removed by Disney because they realized it was going to be a PR disaster for them if they left it in.
Yep.
Because the culture is shifting. I mean, truly, this would have been not even a second thought for Disney just a couple of years ago. Whereas now they have realized the outrage would be unbelievable if they left this in a kids show. By the way, this is the first of its kind, the first TV series developed by Pixar Studios in general, which, in case you don't recall, just released Inside Out 2 this year, a huge hit. And you can also credit them with taking gay themes out of Inside Out 2. That was a very calculated decision for them. Yeah. They didn't want any parents to see any suggestions of sexuality, any ideology related to sexual orientation, gender identity. This was a very calculated turn for them. They don't want to attract that kind of controversy anymore. So a spokesperson for Disney confirmed the story to The Hollywood Reporter in the following statement. Disney says, when it comes to animated content for a younger audience, we recognize that many parents would prefer to discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms and timeline. You don't say.
Think about how different that is from a couple years ago when the Disney execs were talking about the quote-unquote not-so-secret gay agenda.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
How that works.
I kind of agree with, in the chat, said, like, why would you lower Pixar to television anyways? I'm kind of on board with that as well.
Well, yeah, but that's a business decision, not necessarily a decision about their ideological stances. But I mean, it took you long enough. It sure took them long enough to come to the realization that parents are in charge of raising their children, not Disney.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry, Disney's like, you know what, guys? We'll just double down on the feminism. Where's Rachel? We need to update that Snow White movie.
Honestly, if we're talking about a lesser evil, maybe Rachel Zegler is a lesser evil in this situation. I do not want a show targeting 5 to 7-year-olds to include trans storylines. Like, that's so obviously sinister. It's just so blatant and brazen and in your face. They knew they couldn't get away with it. So yeah, Disney has been, it appears that Disney has been humbled.
Humbled, I think monetarily that is 100% true, that the only way to really get to these companies is through the wallet, through the pocketbook. All the outrage in the world isn't going to stop them from doing something because they ideologically oppose you and they disagree with everything that you're saying. The corporation will only change when it affects their bottom line because yes, they do believe in the message, and yes, they do believe in pushing the message at the expense of the product, but that can only go so far before a dam bursts and something has to give. And they've gone through a series of losses over the last several years. This year, however, look, they had many successes that are, in a lot of ways, like you said a couple of minutes ago, a result of those changes. The number one, actually, both of them really include that. So Deadpool and Wolverine certainly wasn't changed to be anything, but it was allowed to be what it was because Disney let Ryan Reynolds make his movie, and he knew what the audience wanted. And then when it came to Inside Out 2, themes were changed, stories were changed to make more broad appeal to the audience. And there's going to be this kind of endless question about what it means to make something with mass appeal as opposed to just making something bland. And they have to find that balance because what they were doing wasn't working. We're out of COVID now. You can't use that as an excuse anymore, though they will probably continue to try to up until 2040. But I don't know. I think that this is a really, really big deal. More so maybe than even Inside Out 2 doing as well as it did at the box office with the changes.
Right. It says more about the direction they're headed. There is a leaked storyboard video going around on Twitter showing the exact storyline that they removed from the show. We cannot show it because of copyright claims.
Everyone keeps getting copyright claimed.
But for you to get a better sense of what this show is about, here it describes the series following a co-ed middle school softball team named the Pickles in the week leading up to their championship game. Each of the 8 episodes centers on the off-the-field life of a character and their point of view, whether it be a player, a parent, a coach, or an umpire. The character that they changed the storyline on remains in the show, but a few lines of dialogue that referenced gender identity have been removed. A source close to Win or Lose, the show, said that the studio made the decision to alter course several months ago, and Disney has declined to comment on any further details. Now, the voice actor, the child voice actor of this character in question, has spoken out about being extremely disheartened by Disney's decision. This says in an exclusive interview with Deadline, in 2020, Chanel Stewart was scrolling through X when she happened upon a post about how Pixar was looking for an authentic 14-year-old transgender girl to voice a transgender teenager in a new animated series. Stewart, who at 14 had already logged a few commercials, knew instantly that it was her role of a lifetime. Just so we're clear, Chanel Stewart, who they're referring to here, is biologically male, identifies as female, and applied for this role, auditioned for this role, because they were looking for a child trans voice actor.
What was their response?
Here was the response in the the Deadline interview. I was exactly what they wanted to a T, and that's why it felt so right. I immediately asked my mom if I could do it because I felt like if I don't, it wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean? And after finding out the news, I wore it as a badge. I wore it with pride. I wore it with honor because it meant so much to me. The thought of authentically portraying a transgender teenage girl made me really happy. I wanted to make this for transgender kids like me. Well, when the headlines came out that Disney was removing the transgender storyline from Win or Lose, here is what the actor's mom had to say about the decision. It was upsetting because my daughter is transgender and this is her life. I felt like it was very important that we not hide that fact. There may be some parents out there who are not ready to have that conversation, but this is the world we live in and everyone should be represented. Everyone deserves to be recognized. And it felt like it was just another setback for the LGBTQ community. Because it's very hard on transgender teenagers, transgender people, period, especially when you're young and you're trying to figure out how to navigate this world that you live in and be able to grow into your own person. Chanel Stewart said, I was very disheartened. From the moment I got the script, I was excited to share my journey to help empower other trans youth. I knew this would be a very important conversation. Trans stories matter and they deserve to be heard.
What is clear whenever these types of things happen is that what ostensibly was the outcome was that a company made a show with a bunch of different stories in it. They cut something out and that's it. Now, if you're just an actor, and let's be real here, if you're an actor without any political clout, meaning if you're like a straight white dude, and your storyline gets cut, your storyline got cut. That's all it is. But if you have gotten your role based on identity politics, or in this case, the company's pushing of identity politics, it's no longer just that a story got cut, it's that you and an entire community was somehow scorned or hurt in some way, which is not what really should be the approach of an actor. The approach of an actor should be, how many times have you seen interviews with actors where they talk about how, oh, I had a small part in this movie, but it never made it to screen, right? Like actors in their younger days, like, oh, I had a part in that, but it ended up in the cutting room floor. See, the thing is, if you're just an actor and all you care about is doing your job well, then that's fine. You're like, look, I got paid for my work, but it didn't end up in the final product. But when everything in the community is some type of activist cause, well, now the company didn't just edit out your scene because it wasn't right for the project. They edited out the scene because it wasn't right for the project at your expense, and you were harmed by it. And that's why these companies were stupid from the very beginning to mix activism with entertainment, because this is their own grave that they have dug themselves.
Well, I mean, fortunately for the voice actor, all they did was remove gender identity lines from the script. So this character still gets an episode all dedicated to that specific character.
Yeah.
It's just the only difference is it's now considered a straight cis girl. I don't really accept that term means anything, but you know, the character is not trans anymore, is simply biologically female. Mm-hmm. So you still got the job, you got paid the same amount of money. The only thing that changed is you didn't accomplish what you wanted to for your cause.
Yeah, she said I was interested in telling my story. I'm like, what does your story have to do with a character that isn't you?
Well, it's the trans story, so collectively it belongs to all trans people.
Okay.
You're telling a trans story, and that represents them.
Okay.
It helps empower other trans youth. That's what they said.
Yeah.
And you know what? The mom in this story, who they interviewed, very sinister person, obviously a basket case.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. That is why your child identifies this way in the first place, and you are directly profiting off of the fact that your child identifies this way. So this woman is insane and deserves no sympathy.
This is a big cultural shift. I do think that this may be the biggest sign of cultural shift when it comes to entertainment right now, this specific story with Disney, because what it is not only that, but they've been rewarded with the changes they've made with strong box office this year, meaning that Moana 2, however people judged the movie, you know, people had ups and downs. So a lot of people didn't think it was all that great, still made a lot of money and was never criticized for identity politics. Inside Out 2 makes changes that Disney feels push back, you know, against the prevailing nature of identity politics that had been infesting their films, makes $1 billion, makes like $1.5 billion. Deadpool and Wolverine is just an action movie that stays away from any of that stuff for the most part, addresses the comedy very, very cleverly, and makes over $1 billion. You will be rewarded if you just make decent movies that stay away from these themes. But if you want to go back the other way, you could make Lightyear again, I guess, and then make a movie about Buzz Lightyear without the real Buzz Lightyear and a bunch of stuff that nobody wants.
And then like lesbian kiss.
And here's the thing. A lot of people point out that like that wasn't even a big part of it. They just didn't want to go see it because the rest of the movie looked like trash too. But it didn't help.
When the whole movie's trash and then you add the gay kiss in the movie, then it's just like an extra middle finger on top of the whole pile of seeming garbage. But I did want to address, before we move on, some of the seething comments that were left under the Pop Crave tweet about this situation. Disney removes transgender storyline from Pixar animated series Win or Lose. Here, this reply says, when it comes to animated content, we recognize parents prefer to discuss subjects with their children on their own terms. Translation: we don't want to lose money for the far-right extremists. We need them to love us.
It would have been really funny if Disney just said, we really want the money of far-right extremists.
Like, that actually would have been hilarious.
If Disney had been like, we appreciate the money of both far-left and far-right extremists and would appreciate all of your business.
Another one said, knowing the joy that it gives trans kids on the rare occasion when they get to see media with a trans character they can relate to makes this effing heartbreaking. And knowing how much more capable kids are at understanding this stuff than people assume, it makes me furious.
I still don't care about being represented authentically beyond, you know, like, is the idea that just any white character is supposed to resonate with me, any white male character is supposed to resonate with me, because that's about as surface level of an argument as you can make for anything. given, like what's the joke is always like, there will always be roles for straight white men because they will always have to have evil corporate leaders in these movies and shows. There's always going to have to be an evil CEO, so there will always be roles for straight white men. I'm not an evil CEO, so I don't feel very represented.
I do.
Also, guys, I do want to point out that this weekend Disney is releasing Mufasa, the prequel nobody asked for from the 2019 Lion King photorealistic remake, and it is going to fall behind Sonic the Hedgehog 3. The first two Sonic movies being great, which I loved, and I am going to hopefully see Sonic at some point before the holidays are over. That is crazy that in 2024, Disney with an IP the size, as popular as The Lion King was, is going to lose out to Sonic the Hedgehog because Sonic is doing it right.
Another one here said Disney is letting their blatant transphobia show. Disney's transphobia will be remembered. Okay, no one's scared of you. You're just a stan account on Twitter. But I think, you know what? This is possibly a sign that the world is healing.
Yep.
I could be speaking too soon, but I think maybe we're pulling back from the insanity.
We'll have to wait and see. Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.